respected. Sometimes the hardest thing to hear is not, "I don't love you anymore." It is the silence before those words, the distance in his eyes, the way his voice changes when he talks to you. Because sometimes a man starts thinking about leaving long before he ever says goodbye. And the woman beside him can feel it even when he is still sitting right there. She feels the coldness in the conversations, the missing affection, the unanswered questions. And tonight, I want you to understand what may be happening inside his mind when he starts thinking about breaking up with you. Because understanding his thoughts can help you stop blaming yourself for everything. There was a woman who once loved a man so deeply that she forgot what life felt like before him. She remembered his favorite food. She remembered the way he liked his coffee. She knew when something was wrong just by hearing him say hello. And when he became distant, she noticed immediately. At first, she thought he was tired. Then she thought maybe work was stressing him. Then she wondered if she had done something wrong. And finally, one night, she looked at him across the room and asked the question she had been afraid to ask. "Are you still happy with me?" He didn't answer immediately. And that silence broke her heart more than any answer could have. Because sometimes you don't need somebody to say, "I'm leaving." You can feel them leaving before their feet ever move. She started crying, not because she wanted to manipulate him, not because she wanted him to feel guilty. She cried because she suddenly realized that the person she had been fighting so hard to keep might already have one foot outside the relationship. And here's where many people make their biggest mistake. They panic. They start begging. They start asking, "What can I do? Tell me what I need to change. Please don't leave me. I'll do anything." And I understand that reaction. When you love somebody, the thought of losing them can make you forget your own value. But listen carefully. You cannot love somebody so hard that they are forced to stay. You cannot cry somebody into loving you. You cannot convince somebody to choose you by destroying yourself. And sometimes when a man is thinking about breaking up, his mind is not as simple as, "I don't love her anymore." Sometimes he is confused. Sometimes he is emotionally exhausted. Sometimes he feels disconnected. Sometimes he doesn't know how to communicate what he feels. And sometimes, yes, his feelings have genuinely changed. But here's the part you need to understand. When he begins thinking about leaving, he may also begin remembering everything that brought you together. He remembers the woman who believed in him when nobody else did. He remembers the nights you stayed awake listening to his problems. He remembers the little things you did that he never thanked you for. And this is why breaking up can become an emotional battle inside his mind. One side of him says, "I need to leave." Another side whispers, "But what if I lose somebody who truly loved me?" That conflict can make a person distant. It can make him quiet. It can make him irritated over little things. It can make him spend more time alone, and sometimes he doesn't even understand why he's behaving that way. But you do not have to chase him through that confusion. You don't have to become smaller just to make him comfortable. You don't have to audition for the position of being loved. You have to stand still long enough to hear your own heart. Because there's a painful truth that nobody teaches us when we are young. Sometimes the person you love is not the person you are meant to keep. And that doesn't mean the relationship was meaningless. It doesn't mean every memory was fake. It doesn't mean you weren't enough. It means two people can love each other and still reach a point where something inside the relationship no longer works. And when that happens, your job is not to lose yourself trying to prevent the inevitable. Your job is to tell the truth. If he is unhappy, let him speak. If he is confused, let him explain. If something needs to change, talk about it, but never beg someone to see the value that they already had the privilege of experiencing. That woman eventually stopped asking him, What do I need to do to make you stay? Instead, through tears, she asked him something different. What do you truly want? He looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, he was honest. He said, I don't know. And she cried again. But this time, her tears were different. She wasn't crying because she was trying to hold him. She was crying because she finally understood that she could not make the decision for him. She could only make one decision for herself. She could choose dignity. She could choose honesty. She could choose to love him without abandoning herself. And sometimes that is the strongest form of love there is, because love isn't always holding somebody tighter. Sometimes love is saying, I want you, but I will not lose myself trying to make you want me. Remember that. If he is thinking about leaving, don't immediately assume that you are worthless. Don't look in the mirror and start counting all the ways you think you failed. You are not supposed to become somebody else just to keep somebody who has stopped choosing you. Give the truth room to breathe. Have the conversation. Listen. Speak honestly. And then watch his actions. Because words can be confused. Feelings can change. But actions eventually reveal the truth. And if he stays, let him stay because he chooses you. Not because you begged. Not because you threatened, not because you cried until he felt guilty. And if he leaves, let your heart break if it needs to break. Cry, grieve, miss him, remember him. But don't build a home inside the pain. Because one day you're going to wake up and realize that the relationship ending did not mean your life ended. It meant one chapter ended. And sometimes the chapter that breaks your heart is the chapter that finally teaches you how to love yourself. That is where your healing begins. Not when he comes back, not when he texts you, not when he regrets leaving. It begins when you stop measuring your worth by whether somebody else chooses to stay. And that is the lesson I want you to carry with you tonight. If someone is thinking about leaving you, don't chase the answer until you lose yourself. Ask for honesty, ask for clarity, then have enough courage to accept the truth, whatever it is. Because the right person should never require you to beg for the right to be loved. And if he walks away from a woman who loved him genuinely, one day he may understand what he lost. But by then, your greatest victory won't be that he regrets leaving. Your greatest victory will be that you no longer need his regret to feel valuable. And this is where the story gets deeper. Because sometimes the man who wants to break up is not angry with you. Sometimes he is fighting with himself. He may look at you and still care about you. He may still laugh with you. He may still remember the beautiful moments. He may still feel something when you touch his hand. And yet, somewhere inside him, there is a voice saying, something isn't right anymore. That is a painful place for both people to live. Because how do you explain to somebody that you still care about them, but you are no longer sure you can continue the relationship? There was another woman who experienced this. She had been with her partner for years. They had built routines together. They had inside jokes. They had memories that nobody else could understand. But slowly he changed. He stopped telling her about his day. He stopped asking about hers. The conversations became shorter. The affection became less frequent. And every time she asked what was wrong, he said, nothing. But she knew. Women often feel emotional distance before they hear the words. She knew something was happening. So one night she finally said, I feel like I'm losing you. He looked down and he didn't deny it. That was the moment her heart sank. She said, is there somebody else? He said, no. She asked, do you still love me? He paused, and that pause said more than anything else. She began crying. She said, why didn't you tell me? And he answered with something that many people don't understand. I didn't want to hurt you. But sometimes avoiding the truth hurts more than telling it. Because when somebody refuses to communicate, you start creating explanations inside your own mind. You start thinking maybe you're not beautiful enough. Maybe you're too emotional. Maybe you're too demanding. Maybe somebody else is better. Maybe you weren't enough. And suddenly you're fighting imaginary battles against women you've never met, problems you never caused, and weaknesses you never had. Listen to me. Don't punish yourself for somebody else's inability to communicate. If a man is confused, he has to communicate his confusion. If he is unhappy, he has to communicate his unhappiness. If he needs space, he has to communicate that. You cannot read somebody's mind, and you should never have to spend every night trying to decode somebody's silence. Sometimes when a man thinks about breaking up, he starts mentally comparing his current relationship with the life he imagines outside of it. He starts wondering what it would feel like to be alone. He starts imagining freedom. He starts remembering who he was before the relationship. And sometimes he convinces himself that leaving will solve everything. But here's something important. A person can run from a relationship without running from the problems inside themselves. If he doesn't know how to communicate, another relationship won't automatically teach him. If he doesn't know how to appreciate someone, another woman won't magically create gratitude in him. If he is emotionally unavailable, changing partners doesn't necessarily change the pattern. That's why you should never assume that his desire to leave automatically means someone else is better than you. Sometimes the issue is not your value. Sometimes the issue is where he is emotionally. And sometimes you have simply grown in different directions. That hurts. But growth can separate people. You can love somebody and still realize that the relationship is no longer healthy. You can miss somebody and still know they are not right for your future. You can remember the good days without pretending the bad days never happened. That is maturity. And maturity in love is not about never getting hurt. It is about learning how to feel the pain without allowing the pain to control your decisions. When you feel him pulling away, don't immediately start running toward him. Pause, breathe. Look at what is actually happening. Is he stressed? Is there a communication problem? Has the relationship become emotionally disconnected? Has trust been damaged? Have both of you stopped putting effort into each other? Or has he simply decided that he no longer wants the relationship? Those questions matter because sometimes a relationship can be repaired and sometimes it needs to be released, but you cannot know which one it is if you're too afraid to hear the truth. The woman in our story eventually sat down with him again. This time, she didn't scream. She didn't threaten him. She didn't beg. She simply said, I love you, but I need honesty. And he finally opened up. He told her he felt lost. He told her he had been unhappy with himself. He told her that he didn't know what he wanted. And she realized something that changed her entire perspective. His distance wasn't necessarily proof that she wasn't enough. He had been fighting battles inside himself that she couldn't solve for him, and that taught her a powerful lesson. You can support someone. You can encourage someone. You can love someone. But you cannot heal someone who refuses to face themselves. That is not your responsibility. And if you're watching this right now because you're afraid someone you love is thinking about leaving you, I want you to hear this clearly. Don't spend every night begging heaven to make somebody stay. Ask for something greater. Ask for the strength to accept whatever is true. Because sometimes we pray, please don't let him leave. But perhaps the better prayer is, give me the strength to survive whatever happens next. Because if he stays, you need strength to rebuild. And if he leaves, you need strength to heal. Either way, you need strength. There comes a moment in every painful relationship when you have to stop asking, how do I make him choose me? And start asking, why am I so afraid of being unchosen? That question can change your life. Because maybe you've been taught that somebody leaving means you're not lovable. Maybe you've connected your worth to being someone's girlfriend, wife, partner, or favorite person. But you were somebody before he arrived. You had dreams before he knew your name. You laughed before he held your hand. You had a future before he became part of your story. Don't forget the woman you were before the relationship. Now, she is still inside you. She is waiting for you to remember her. And if this relationship survives, let it survive because both people are willing to work, not because one person is terrified of losing the other. Love should have effort from both sides, communication from both sides, respect from both sides, accountability from both sides. You cannot carry a relationship with two people by yourself. And if you're the only one fighting for it, eventually you won't be fighting for love anymore. You'll be fighting against reality. That's when you have to step back, not to manipulate him, not to make him chase you, not to make him jealous, but to protect your heart. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've already said enough. You explained, you loved, you tried, you communicated, and now you are allowing the other person to reveal what they truly want. That is not weakness. That is self-respect. And if he realizes he wants you, let him demonstrate it through action. Let him communicate. Let him make effort. Let him show consistency. Because regret without action is just emotion. And words without change are just noise. You deserve something real, something peaceful, something where you don't have to wake up every morning wondering whether you're still wanted. And perhaps that is the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes losing somebody teaches you that you were holding on to them because you were afraid of being alone. But being alone is not the same thing as being abandoned. Sometimes being alone is where you finally hear yourself again. You finally sleep peacefully. You finally stop checking your phone. You finally stop analyzing every message. You finally stop wondering what his silence means. And slowly you begin coming back to yourself. That's when healing becomes beautiful, because you stop waiting for him to give you closure. You give yourself closure. You stop waiting for him to recognize your value. You recognize it yourself. And you stop asking whether he will come back. You start asking whether if he does come back, he has become the kind of person you can trust again. That question changes everything. Because now you're not begging for love. You're evaluating whether the love being offered is worthy of you. And that is where your power begins. Not in controlling him, not in making him jealous, not in making him regret leaving. Your power begins when you realize that you can love somebody deeply and still walk away from what keeps breaking your heart. And sometimes that is the moment he finally understands who you really were, not because you disappeared to punish him, but because when you stopped chasing, he finally had to face the reality of your absence. And absence can reveal what constant presence allowed someone to take for granted. But whether he comes back or not, don't make that your ending. Your ending is not his decision. Your ending is the woman you become after the pain. The woman who learns to love without losing herself. The woman who forgives without forgetting the lesson. The woman who can cry without collapsing. The woman who can miss somebody without going back to what hurt her. That woman is powerful. And if you're becoming her right now, even through tears, you're already healing. There is something nobody tells you about the moment a relationship begins to fall apart. The hardest part isn't always losing the person. Sometimes the hardest part is losing the future you imagine with them. You didn't just imagine his hand in yours. You imagined holidays together. You imagined growing older together. You imagined waking up beside him years from now. You imagined the home, the family, the ordinary mornings, the little arguments that would eventually turn into laughter. So when he starts thinking about breaking up, you're not only afraid of losing him, you're afraid of losing the entire life you built inside your imagination. And that's why it hurts so deeply. But listen to me, a future you imagined is not a promise. It was a possibility. And sometimes God closes a door because the life waiting behind another door is bigger than the one you were afraid to lose. I know that doesn't make the pain disappear. When your heart is broken, motivational words don't magically stop the tears. Sometimes you have to cry. Sometimes you have to sit in the dark and admit, I really love this person. You have to admit, I thought this was going to last. You have to admit, I don't understand why this is happening. And that's okay. You don't have to pretend to be strong every second. Strength isn't pretending you don't hurt. Strength is hurting and refusing to destroy yourself because of it. There was a woman who reached a point where she couldn't sleep. Every night she would check her phone. She would look at his last message. She would read old conversations. She would look at pictures. And then she would ask herself the same question. How did we get here? She kept searching for the exact moment everything changed. Was it that argument? Was it something she said? Was she too available? Was she too loving? Was she not mysterious enough? Was she too emotional? She blamed herself for everything. Until one day, an older woman who had been watching her suffer said something simple. My child, stop trying to find the moment you became unlovable. Those words stopped her because she had been searching for evidence that she was the problem, but maybe she wasn't. Maybe the relationship simply reached a place where both people needed to be honest about what they wanted. And that's something you need to understand too. A breakup doesn't automatically mean somebody failed. Sometimes two people can do their best and still discover that their paths are changing. But if he is thinking about breaking up with you, pay attention to what happens next. Does he communicate? Does he take responsibility? Does he try to repair what is broken? Does he listen to your pain? Does he show genuine effort? Or does he simply disappear and expect you to chase him? Because there is a difference between a man who is struggling inside a relationship and a man who has emotionally checked out of it, and you don't have to beg somebody to tell you which one he is. His behavior will eventually tell you. If he still cares, there will be some effort, maybe imperfect effort, maybe confused effort, maybe scared effort, but there will be movement toward resolution. And if there is nothing but distance, silence, avoidance, and indifference, you have to respect what his actions are saying. Not because you don't love him, but because you love yourself too. This is where many women make another painful mistake. They start trying to become the perfect woman. They change their appearance, they change their personality, they stop expressing their feelings. Become afraid to disagree, they start walking on eggshells. They think, maybe if I become easier to love, he will stay. But sweetheart, love that requires you to erase yourself is not the kind of love you should spend your life protecting. You shouldn't have to become silent to keep somebody comfortable. You shouldn't have to hide your emotions to keep somebody interested. You shouldn't have to pretend you don't care so that somebody doesn't take you for granted. The right relationship doesn't require you to perform. It requires you to be real. Now, I'm not saying never change. We all have things to improve. Maybe you need better communication. Maybe you need to stop reacting from fear. Maybe you need to become more patient. Maybe you need to learn how to listen. Growth is beautiful, but there is a difference between improving yourself and abandoning yourself. Never confuse the two. If he says this relationship is hurting me, listen. If he says I feel disconnected, listen. If he says we need to change something, listen. But if you find yourself begging, please tell me what version of me you want, stop. You are not a product waiting for somebody to customize you. You are a human being. You have a heart, you have dignity, you have a life, and you deserve to be loved as a whole person. Sometimes when a man thinks about breaking up, he starts wondering whether he can be happier alone. He may romanticize freedom. He may remember his single life. He may imagine fewer responsibilities, fewer arguments, fewer emotional conversations. And he may convince himself that leaving will make everything easier. But eventually, reality catches up with fantasy. Because every relationship has challenges. Being alone has challenges too. The question isn't, which life has no problems? There is no such life. The real question is, which life is worth the effort? And if he decides that the relationship is no longer worth fighting for, you cannot make that decision for him. You can only make yours. And your decision should be this: I will not beg for a place in somebody's life. I will not chase someone who is running from me. I will not compete with somebody's uncertainty. I will communicate honestly, love deeply, and then allow the truth to be what it is. That doesn't mean you won't cry. You probably will. But there is a different kind of crying that happens when you finally stop fighting reality. It is the cry of acceptance, the kind where you say, I wanted this to work. I really did. But I cannot force it. And after that cry, something strange happens. You breathe. For the first time in weeks, you breathe without waiting for his next message. You eat without losing your appetite. You sleep without staring at the ceiling. You wake up and realize that your life is still here. Your dreams are still here. Your family is still here. Your future is still here. You are still here. And that realization is powerful because heartbreak wants to convince you that your whole world has disappeared. But heartbreak is lying. Your world didn't disappear. One part of your world changed, and you are still capable of building something beautiful from what remains. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe the relationship gets another chance. Maybe it doesn't. But don't spend your healing sitting beside the door waiting for somebody else to decide whether you are worthy of happiness. Go live, go grow, go laugh again, go pursue the dreams you put on hold. Become so deeply connected to yourself that whether he returns or not, you know who you are. And if he comes back one day, don't just ask, do you miss me? Ask, what has changed? Don't be impressed by tears alone. Don't be impressed by loneliness. Don't be impressed by, I made a mistake. Look for accountability. Look for consistency. Look for maturity. Look for change behavior. Because missing you and being ready for you are two completely different things. A man can miss your presence and still not be prepared to give you the relationship you deserve. And you have to understand that difference. You deserve more than somebody who returns because they are lonely. You deserve somebody who returns because they have grown. And if that person is him, let his actions prove it. If it isn't him, don't be afraid, because your life is not over. Sometimes the person you thought was your destination was only part of your journey. And maybe the relationship taught you how deeply you can love. Maybe it taught you boundaries. Maybe it taught you patience. Maybe it taught you what you will never accept again. Maybe it taught you that you cannot save somebody who doesn't want to save themselves. Whatever the lesson is, take it. Don't waste the pain. Turn it into wisdom. Turn the tears into strength. Turn the disappointment into standards. Turn the ending into a beginning. Because one day, you're going to look back at the woman who was crying over this man and feel something different. You won't hate her. You'll love her. You'll understand why she held on. You'll understand why she cried. You'll understand why she was scared. But you'll also be proud of her because she survived. And maybe that is the most beautiful part of the story. Not that he stayed, not that he came back, not that he regretted leaving, but that she finally learned she could survive someone leaving. And once you learn that, nobody can control your happiness by threatening to walk away. You stop loving from fear. You start loving from choice. And that changes everything. And maybe tonight you needed to hear this because you're sitting somewhere wondering what he is thinking. Maybe you're watching his behavior change. Maybe his messages are shorter. Maybe his voice doesn't carry the same warmth. Maybe you're lying in bed asking yourself, is he preparing to leave me? And I know that fear. I know how terrifying it is to love somebody and feel them slowly slipping away. But don't let the fear of losing him make you lose yourself. If he is thinking about breaking up, let him be honest. If he is confused, let him speak. If something can be repaired, then both of you must be willing to repair it. And if he has already decided to leave, don't destroy your heart trying to convince him that you are worth staying for. You are worth staying for. But the person who needs to understand that first is you. You don't need to chase love. You don't need to beg for attention. You don't need to compete with another woman. You don't need to become somebody you're not. You need to stand in front of your own mirror and remember who you were before heartbreak made you question yourself. Because the truth is, sometimes the relationship ends before the love completely disappears. And that's what makes it so painful. You can still love somebody who is no longer meant to walk beside you. You can still miss somebody who hurt you. You can still remember the beautiful moments without returning to the painful ones. That's called healing. Healing doesn't mean you stop caring overnight. Healing means you stop allowing what happened to decide who you become. So cry if you need to cry. Let those tears come. Don't be ashamed of them. Those tears are proof that you cared. But when the tears are finished, get up, wash your face, take a deep breath, and remind yourself, I was worthy before him. I am worthy after him. And I will remain worthy, whether he stays or walks away. Because your value was never determined by his decision. If he stays, let him stay because he truly wants to build with you. If he leaves, let him leave without taking your identity with him. And if he ever comes back, don't simply ask whether he missed you. Ask whether he understands you. Ask whether he has changed. Ask whether he is ready to love you in a way that brings peace instead of constant uncertainty. Because you don't need somebody who only realizes your value after losing access to you. Now, you need somebody who recognizes your value while standing beside you. And remember this one final thing. Sometimes God removes a person from your life, not because you weren't enough for them, but because you were becoming too lost inside the relationship. Sometimes losing someone forces you to find yourself. And maybe that's what this pain is doing for you. Maybe this heartbreak is not destroying you. Maybe it is rebuilding you. Maybe one day you'll look back and say, I thought losing him was the worst thing that could happen to me. And then you'll smile because you'll realize losing him was not the end of my story. It was the moment I finally came back to myself. So don't chase somebody who is unsure about you. Don't beg somebody to choose you. Love deeply, communicate honestly, forgive when forgiveness is deserved, and fight for a relationship when both hearts are willing, but never fight so hard for someone that you have to abandon yourself. Because the greatest love story you will ever live is not the story of someone finally choosing you. It is the story of you finally choosing yourself. And when you do that, you don't become cold. You become wiser. You don't stop loving. You simply stop accepting love that costs you your peace. So if he's thinking about leaving, let the truth come. Let him speak. Let him choose. And you choose too. Choose your dignity. Choose your healing. Choose your future. Choose the woman you are becoming. Because sometimes the person you desperately wanted to keep was only meant to teach you something you desperately needed to learn. And when that lesson is complete, you won't need to chase him anymore. You won't need to ask why he left. You won't need to wonder whether he regrets it. You'll simply look at your life and say, I survived what I thought would destroy me. And now I know my worth. And that is when the heartbreak finally loses its power. Not when he comes back, not when he apologizes, not when he regrets losing you, but when you can remember him without needing him, when you can love the memories without begging for their return, when you can finally say, with tears in your eyes and peace in your heart, I loved you deeply, but I love myself enough to let you go. And sometimes that is the strongest goodbye a heart can ever speak.